Was a senator. Bernie Sanders was an organizer. He launched in the civil rights movement. He was dragged into a paddy wagon by the police for fighting for the right thing. Millions of us have been inspired by you. We stand on your shoulders. Our organizer-in-chief. San Texas, Senator Bernie Sanders.
The truth is that a midterm election is not as sexy as a presidential election. Now, when you're running for president, everyone's having debates, and the media's all talking about it, and you're focusing on this person or that person. Kind of the American people get excited about it. They are dead wrong. And tell them they should have been here. And tell them they will be making a very, very big mistake if they don't vote on election day. Now, one of the things that we see in terms of voter turnout, and it's kind of ironic, is that for young people, this election, because you're young, is going to impact the future of your lives, which I hope are very long. But what we have is the irony that older people, and I want everybody to come out to vote for sure, older people vote in much larger numbers, percentage-wise, than younger people. And one simple political truth is if younger people voted at the same percentage level as people who are 60 or 65, we could transform this country tomorrow. And the reason for that is that your generation, thank God, is the most progressive generation in the history of this country. Yours is a generation that has stood up to racism, you have stood up to sexism, you have stood up to homophobia, and you have stood up to xenophobia. And I thank you very much, because not only is it the right thing to do, you inspire many of us. We look at you and we say, this is what the future of America could be. Now, to those of your friends who are just too busy watching the World Series to come out and vote, let me just tell you what this election is about and why you should get your friends out to vote. Number one, the Supreme Court of the United States, which is now an extremely right-wing Supreme Court, put into power by people who have a huge amount of money, they have decided, and this really is, I keep saying it over and over again, but each time I say it, it kind of blows my mind. This is a Supreme Court who believes in the year 2022, not 1922, not 1822, in 2022, that women in America are not smart enough to control their own bodies. And this campaign, this election is about telling that Supreme Court that they are dead wrong. It will be women that control their bodies, and not some local politicians. And by the way, let me say to the men who are here, and I know you already know this is not a women's issue. This is an issue in which men have got to stand with the women. But this campaign, this election cycle, not just about women's rights, it is about the climate. And I don't have to tell anybody in Texas that climate change is real and the devastating impact it is having, not only on Texas, the West Coast, but countries all over the world. You understand that the past 8 years have been the warmest 8 years on record. You understand that the western half of America is experiencing its worst drought in 1,200 years. You understand that we are seeing historic rainfalls and extreme weather disturbances in city after city. What they call 1,000-year rainfalls taking place 5 times a year. You understand that in cities like London and countries like China, the weather has become so warm that bridges are literally melting. They have to cease transportation operations because bridges became unsafe because of how warm the climate was there. So this campaign is about whether or not the United States of America, and we can't do it alone, whether the United States of America will lead the world in having the courage to take on the greed of the fossil fuel industry and transform our energy system. And I know that this is a sensitive issue in Texas. No great secret that the oil industry is powerful here. But the truth of the matter is that if we do not get our act together, not only in the United States, but all over the world, this is tough stuff. You know, Greg talked about how hard it is. Imagine in a world as divided as it is right now, we need to work with China. We're going to have to figure out, despite the horrible war in the Ukraine, how you work with Russia, how we work with Europe, how we work with Latin America. How do we have the entire planet coming together and getting away from fossil fuels so that we leave our kids and future generations a planet that is healthy and habitable? And you guys, your generation has led that effort, and you've got a lot more work to do. But this campaign, it's not just about women's rights and climate change, as enormously important as goes on. And as a United States Senator, I never thought, honest to God, that I would have to be saying this. But this campaign is about whether or not we maintain the foundations of American democracy. You know, I have run in many elections. Greg mentioned that I ran for mayor, and I ran for office before that, and I have lost elections, and I have won elections. And that's what democracy is about. You know, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. But if people from the former president of the United States on down go around saying that the only way we could lose an election is if there is fraud, think about what that means. And what it means is they are trying to destroy American democracy and move us toward an authoritarian society. And they are not really shy about acknowledging that. They look to people like Viktor Orban from Hungary as a leader that they want this country to emulate.
Yes, we should look up to the guy that's $3 million.
So what we should be doing, what we need to do is to make it clear, what we need to do is to make it clear that too many people in our country have fought and died to defend American democracy, and we're not going to let young old things take that away from us. But this election is not just But we're not going, this election is not only about right-wing extremism trying to destroy American democracy. I'll tell you what else this election is about. It is about taking on a corrupt political system. What we are seeing all over this country are billionaires trying to buy elections. Now, what American democracy is supposed to be about is a clash of ideas. If your ideas are different than mine, you want to run for office against me, do it. Let the people decide which ideas they like. But we cannot continue to have a situation where we're seeing it right now. The wealthiest people in this country are buying politicians, buying elections. That is not called democracy, that is oligarchy. And that is why together, and I know Greg is going to be a leader on this, we're going to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. I hope that many of you, if you have the calling, I hope many of you will think about running for office, whether it's school board or president or whatever it may be. Think about it. But I don't want you to have to spend half your lives begging for campaign contributions from billionaires. And this campaign is whether or not we deal finally in a comprehensive manner with 10 million undocumented immigrants in this country. In my view, instead of demonizing immigrants, we have got to move towards citizenship in a comprehensive immigration reform. But this campaign and this election, where we are at this moment in American history, is even more than all of that stuff. What it's about is whether or not we have an economy that works for you and working people all across this country, or whether we continue to have an economy that simply benefits the wealthiest people in our society. Now, you don't hear much about this. You don't hear it on the floor of the Senate or the floor of the House. You don't see it on TV, and the reasons for that. But what I want you to know is at this particular moment in history, we have more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had. You all know that? You all know what that means. And here is what it means in real life. It means that today there are 3 people who own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. You got that? You have the top 1% own more wealth than the bottom 92%. And if you work for a large corporation in an unprecedented way, the CEO of that corporation will be earning 400 times what the average worker is making. And during the pandemic, which has cost us over 1 million lives, during this pandemic, when working people had no option, they couldn't sit home with their computers, they had to go to work, whether it's at a grocery store or a warehouse, or driving a bus, or being a nurse. We lost 5,000 nurses during the pandemic up to now. You have tens of thousands of working people who went to work to keep the economy going, if they're in healthcare, to save people's lives. And at the same time, while thousands of workers died, the billionaire class saw a $2 trillion increase in their wealth. So where we are today is an economy where the richest people have never had it so good, while at the same time, working people are struggling. And the impact of inflation is to make a bad situation worse. And when you see people who are angry out there, people are angry at the system, well, in many ways they have a right to be angry. Real inflation adjusted for wages in America are lower today than they were 50 years ago. Now I want you to think about it. Think about all of the new technology that's been developed over that time. The increase in worker productivity. Workers today producing a lot more than they used to. and yet workers today earn in real dollars less than 50 years ago, while the billionaires are doing better than at any time in history. So what all of that is about is to tell the billionaire class that they cannot have it all, that we are coming after them. We are the richest country in the history of the world. And if we had good public policy, there is absolutely no reason why every man, woman, and child in this country cannot enjoy a decent standard of living. My Republican colleagues are basing a lot of their campaign talking about inflation. And what they are trying to do is to say, well, you know, inflation is 8%, it's causing a lot of problems, and it is causing a lot of problems, no question about it. And the reason why we have inflation in America is because of people like Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders and others. That's the cause of inflation. Well, they're lying. Inflation, sadly enough, is not just an American issue, it is a global issue. All right, they're going to have to explain why inflation in the United Kingdom is today at 10%. They're going to have to explain why inflation in Europe is at 11%. Joe Biden did not cause that. What caused inflation are three basic facts. Number one, the pandemic resulted in a breakdown of supply chains, and companies weren't getting the supplies they needed. Prices went up. Number two, the horrific, horrible war in Ukraine also impacted inflation. But there is a third reason that Republicans are not talking about, and that is the unprecedented level of corporate greed that we are now seeing. Now, if you want to know why gas prices have gone way up, you should know that ExxonMobil's profits over the last year have increased by 280%. Chevron's profits are up by 277%. ConocoPhillips' profits are up by 144%. If you want to know why food prices are high, take a look at the profit margin of major food company after major food company. They are soaring. Pharmaceutical companies enjoying unbelievable profits while they charge us the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. And let me tell you something else. Republicans are saying that the reason we have inflation is because we passed the American Rescue Plan. And let me tell you this. I, as the chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, that had a lot to do with that plan, I am not going to apologize to anybody for, in the middle of a pandemic, when people are dying by the thousands every day, when people are losing their jobs by the millions, I am not going to apologize for making sure that every man, woman, and child had a check of $1,400 in the middle of the day. When millions of workers were losing their jobs, we extended unemployment benefits. When working parents were having a hard time raising their kids, we gave them $300 per month per child in order to raise their kids. When some hospitals were on the verge of collapse because of all the COVID cases were coming in, I don't apologize for putting billions of dollars into hospitals all across this country. And to help universities and school systems all across this country in their time of need. That's what we did, and I don't apologize for it. But let me tell you what the Republicans won't tell you, is that they gain power in the House and the Senate, they have the idea that at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, we should give unbelievably large tax breaks to the wealthiest people in this country. They want to repeal the estate tax. Now, probably nobody knows what the estate tax is, but it is the tax that the wealthiest 0.1% their families pay when the billionaire dies. And if you repeal that tax, it will increase the national debt by $1.75 trillion. Elon Musk's family, just one family, I have nothing against the family, I don't know the family, but they do not deserve a tax break of $83 billion for one family. And the other billionaire families would also benefit similarly. And in order to pay for that, they got another brilliant idea. And that is at a time when seniors are struggling all across this country with health care, prescription drugs to heat their homes. They want to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So the contrast is quite clear. It's whether we demand that the wealthiest people in this country start paying their fair share of taxes, or we give them massive tax cuts. And I know which side the American people are on that issue. And let me conclude by saying this. It is enormously important that we have a vision of where we want to go as a nation. It's not good enough just to be critical of Republicans and all of that stuff. Where do we want to go as a nation? What kind of nation do we want to become? And despite all of the political divisions in this country, it turns out that whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent, you have a pretty clear sense on economic issues of where you want to go. Overwhelming majority of Americans believe that if you work 40 hours a week, you should not live in poverty. We got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Strong majority of Americans understand that if you guys want to form a union, we should make it easier for you to form a union, not harder, and we should not tolerate illegal corporate behavior. Overwhelmingly, the American people understand that health care is a human right, not a privilege. Right now, we are spending twice as much per person on health care as the people of other major countries, all of which guarantee health care to all of their people. 60,000 Americans die every year because they can't get to a doctor on time because they're uninsured or underinsured. Now is the time, and I know Greg is going to work hard on this issue. We've got to join the rest of the world, guarantee health care to all without out-of-pocket expense through a Medicare for all single-payer system. The function of health care is not to make the insurance companies rich. It's to guarantee health care to all. We live in a competitive global economy. We need the best educated workforce in the world. 50 years ago, a high school degree was great. You go out, you get a job, you make it in the middle class. That is not the case today. That is why we must make public colleges, universities, trade schools, tuition free. And if we can provide, if the Republicans want to provide almost $2 trillion in tax breaks to billionaires, yes, we can cancel all student debt in this country. So let me just thank you all for coming out. And I think as Greg indicated, our goal is not only to win this election in Texas, win it all over the country, but we're begging you for the future of this country, for your kids, the future generations, you have got to get involved in the political process. And as Greg indicated quite correctly, this is not easy stuff. We are taking on the greed of a billionaire class that despite having so much money, they want even more. They control the economy. They increasingly control our political system. They own the media. So, there are certain things you're just not going to see in corporate media. This is not easy stuff. But for the future of this country, for our great country, for all those who fought and died to defend our country, I hope very much you guys will roll up your sleeves and get to work and make this country the kind of country you know and I know that we can become. Thank you all very much.
We're going to take a picture with you guys.